Okay, so during this Gilded Age, you're also going to see the rise of major corporations. And these corporations are going to be working together. There's going to be several corporate mergers that take place. We'll talk about that in just a second. So you have a number of different forms of monopoly where competition is decreased or eliminated in certain industries going on during this Gilded Age. And if there's no competition, well then, these corporations are going to be profiting immensely and they're going to get super wealthy, and that's why it's gilded, right? That's why it's this golden age for some, all right? So during this period of time, you have several different forms of businesses working together. First, let's talk about pools. What's a pool? Pools are where you have different companies, right? Different businesses who are working together to set prices, right? So they're fixing prices in that industry. Let's just say, for example, you have a bunch of different shoe manufacturers, right? People who make shoes, right? And they're in different parts of the United States, and they all work together, right? They have meetings. They're different companies, but they're working together, and they come together and they say, all right, your region is the Southwest, right? You're going to operate in New Mexico. Our region is in Southern California. Then we have another company whose region is in Northern California. All right, they're separate companies in their own regions, and they divide up the areas, right? They divide up the various different markets, and then they fix prices. All right, we're all going to sell our shoes for this particular price, right? There's no real competition because these companies are working together to have the same prices. They're not like lowering their prices to compete with each other. You're also seeing the rise of what are called trusts, okay? And so what is a trust? Well, a trust is when you have several different companies or different corporations coming together under one company, to where one company or one single director is controlling a number of different companies, which are supposed to be rivals with each other, but really they're all part of one large trust. And this is creating a monopoly. Okay, a monopoly where one business is in control and dominating an entire industry, and there's no real competition for that one trust. So, like I was saying, there was a number of corporate mergers, major corporate mergers. Okay, so one corporation gets bought out by another, and now they are merged into one larger corporation. So some examples of this. You have this most powerful corporation in terms of the steel industry, that's U.S. Steel, okay? U.S. Steel, primarily owned by Andrew Carnegie, okay? One of the wealthiest men in the United States at this time. All right, so U.S. Steel dominates the steel industry at this time. Then there's Standard Oil, another example. Standard Oil, primarily controlled by John D. Rockefeller, another member of the 1% at this time. Standard Oil is definitely a huge monopoly. Okay, they are controlling the oil industry at this time. And oil, there's a lot of money in that, a lot of wealth. So there's a great deal of power that comes along with that. So let's take a closer look at the example of Standard Oil and how this monopoly came about. The first strategy used by Standard Oil was something called horizontal expansion, okay? Horizontal expansion. And horizontal expansion is basically where one company is going to merge with other companies by buying them out. So that was the strategy first used by Standard Oil to control and dominate its industry and create a monopoly. But then Standard Oil went beyond that and used another strategy called vertical integration. This is where a company owns not just other businesses within its own industry, but other industries as well that are related to its industry. So you own not just the raw materials, but you also own the transportation companies, the manufacturing factories, right? The distribution of your product. All of that is owned by one large company, right? One trust. And that's called vertical integration. So you own everything that's related to your industry, even within other industries, right? Like this transportation and the production or refining of oil, two completely different industries, right? Or even, having storage facilities where you keep your oil. You don't have to, go to some other company to store your oil. No, you own the storage facilities too. Okay, so you're expanding into other industries that are related to your main industry. And that's called vertical integration, so that you own all levels of production of your product. So this is the period where these corporations are becoming super powerful, where the 1% are extremely wealthy, Okay, they are owning much more wealth than everybody else. Let's go ahead and talk about these inequalities in terms of business and the workers. Okay, so at the top of this hierarchy involved with labor, of course, you have the business owners who we've been talking about, the 1%, right? Guys like Andrew Carnegie, guys like John D. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, all right, the 1%. The 1% at this time, we're talking about in the Gilded Age, they own more property and more wealth than the rest of the 99% of the population in the United States all put together. Isn't that crazy? Think about that. Remember, land is liberty, land is freedom. Okay, they own more land and more money, more wealth than everybody else put together. Okay, so let's talk about the hierarchy within the workers themselves, right? Because some workers getting paid more than other workers, right? There's inequalities there too. So you have skilled workers who are working in these factories and in various different industries. The skilled workers are getting paid the most, right? And if there's an economic depression and people start losing their jobs, it's most likely that the skilled workers are going to keep their jobs because they're valuable, because they know, a large amount of skills related to that job. Then you have semi-skilled workers, right? They get paid less than the skilled workers, and they're more expendable, meaning that they could get fired and get replaced much more easier because the skills that they know are much more basic, and someone could be trained on those skills in a short period of time. Now let's talk a little bit about the working conditions during this time. Not so good for the workers. All right, the working conditions are pretty rough. All right, so for one, most workers in doing this type of industrial work that's happening at the time, they're working like 12-hour days, some even more than that, some maybe even 14-hour days, right? So crazy hours, right? And also beyond that, there's no unemployment at this time, right? No such thing as unemployment. So if you're out of work, sorry, you better find a job pretty quick because there's no government pay that's going to pay you, no government agency or anything like that that's going to give you unemployment, right? There's also no pensions for workers at this time. So if you retire, you better have saved up a pretty good amount of money, right? And also, there's no workers' compensation. So if you're hurt on the job, or if people died on the job, their families aren't going to be compensated, right? And so there were a number of dangerous jobs at this time. This industrial work was not easy. Lots of people died on the job, right? In a 20-year period at the end of the 1800s, 35,000 people died on the job.